Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode where we are creating the Legend of Zelda in GameMaker, breaking it down part by part. This is part 2 in the series. In the last episode, we actually created a pretty simplistic little scenario. We created our object, which is the player, which is going to be a red square, and it moves back and forth on the screen. And so that's all it does. Today, we're going to add the sprites for moving up, down, left, and right, and a little bit of some player states that are going to allow us to do things like having the attack or dropping bombs, and so on and so forth. And I'll show you what we mean. Let's go ahead and get the game up and running. In fact, let's do a restart. Okay. So you'll notice when you move, when you use your sword, he actually stops for a moment. So that's one of the player states that we're going to do. It's the same thing with if he throws a boomerang or drops a bomb, there's like a little pause. So we're going to add some of that in there. And so let's go back to this, and I'm going to up the size of this screen. I think last time we did ×2. Let's just multiply it ×4, and that'll make that bigger. It'll be easier to see everything. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. Let's go ahead and create the sprites that we need for the player. And so we're going to create a group called player. And we're going to add all the sprites here in here. So let's go ahead and add them. So we're going to do sprite. Let's just call it player up. We'll edit the sprite, and we're going to go here to File, Add from Strip. And I've already created these strips. So I have a Link walking up strip. It's 2 images per row, 16 by 16. Everything else stays the same. And now we have a little sprite of Link walking up. We'll center this, and we'll save that. Let's create the next one, which is sprite player down. Same exact thing. We're going to load from strip, and here's our down walk sprite 2 16 16 center, and we're going to do I don't know if we're going to, let's call it side. Let's create a sprite called sprite player side, and what we're going to do is we're going to use the same sprite for left and right, because all we have to do is flip it on its axis. So we'll keep that the same. There we go. So that's 2 images, yes. 16 16. Okay, we're good. We're going to add one more here. Let's see, let's call it sprite player attack side. So this is what we'll get to today, is we're going to add the side attack as an example. We'll finish, I think that's probably going to be enough that I can fit into this episode today. And that's going to be this one. This one's actually only going to be 1 image. So 16 by 16. So we'll just add that 1 image. This will all make a little bit more sense when we get everything going. Okay, so loaded our Link sprites. We have them walking up, down, and left, and this will be the right, and then his attack. So we're good on that. We're going to change the player sprite to be the player up, because Link starts off up. And here's where we're going to do all the work. Okay, so let's start off by, we've already got a player, velocities, the speed. I think what we need to add, okay, so we're going to add 2 more variables here. One is called timer. It's going to be set to 0. And then we're going to do a state. This is going to be the player state, and it's going to equal to idle. And that's when he's not moving at all. So next, we're going to go to the step. We're actually going to add a lot more code. This is going to make this a little bit more complex, but we're going to need it to have a lot more finite control over the player. And some people call this a finite state machine. Basically what we're going to be doing is giving the player the ability to do one thing at any moment. and then you have complete control over what happens during that moment in time. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a switch statement, and we're going to switch on the state, the player state. So right now he's in idle. And so we're going to go ahead and set up all the states that we're going to need for now. So we'll start off with case idle. We're going to do case up, case left. All right, well, let's do down, case okay. So those are all the main states that we're going to need for the player. And there's going to be a lot of repetitive code, and we can make functions later if we need to, but right now we're just going to start off pretty simple. So the thing that we need to do is we're going to be setting which images to use, how fast he's moving, so on and so forth, and how fast the images are going to be going. So in this case, in an idle, we need the image speed to equal to 0. So this is when he stops moving. It's always best to show an example. So whenever he stops, there is no animation, but if I'm pressing left or right, there is a small animation, even though those are only 2 frames. So the idle is really, we're going to stop the animation, so we're going to set the image speed to 0, which stops all animations. So no matter which direction we're already pointing. We're also going to set the velocity of the x and y to equal to 0. So that actually stops the motion of the object in the world. Okay, we're going to add some more stuff here in a minute, but we're basically going to set all these up, the main pieces that we need. So in the case of up, what we need to do is we're going to do image speed, and in our case, we're going to make it equal to 0.2. But I'm going to need to use this quite a bit, and if we ever want to change it down the road, I'm going to create something called anim speed for the speed. So we're going to do 0.2 here. That way we can keep using this throughout, and if we ever need to change this, we can. And so what this does is it changes how fast each of those frames play, and it's 0.2 of a second, or 0.2 of a tick, no, of a second, yes, that each of these will play. So we're going to set the speed, the animation speed. Now we need to actually set which animation we're going to use. In this case, we're going to go back and set it to one of these sprites. In our case, we're going to do sprite index equals and we're going to do sprite player up, right? So now what we're going to do is we're also going to set some other variables that are going to be important later as we're messing with some variables. So remember how down here we were setting the speed? We're not going to do this anymore. That was a simple way of doing it. If you ever have a simple object that you don't have to swap a bunch of stuff, this is perfectly fine. And that's what we did in the last episode. But what we're going to do now is we're going to actually set the Vx equal to 0. So on the velocity of the x-axis, since he's going up, we are not going to move left or right, but we are going to set the velocity equal to the player speed, which is this variable that's actually set in the creation event. So now he's going to go up. And I should, yes, that's correct. So, no, actually that's going to be times, so it's -1 times player speed, because it's moving up is in the negative axis. So that's what we're going to do there. So we're going to do that with every one of these. We're going to do basically the same thing. So we're going to copy and paste a lot of this and set all these where this stays the same, this changes to down, this stays the same, we just take this out, so now the player speed is equal to a positive number, which moves them down, We're going to do the same thing here. And so in this case, when moving left, we're going to move the Vx in that direction, and the Y is going to be 0. And this is going to be side. And we'll do the last one here. We're going to test this code, and there's going to be problems with it. Whoops. Let's copy the... There's going to be problems with it, but we're going to fix it. I'm going to show you where we are right now. So, and just so you get a sense of what variables we're setting. So most of this should work. We should actually see things changing. Okay. That's right. So what's the problem here is that we have no code to check the up, down, left, right. So there's your first thing that we need to learn. So I'm going to copy and paste a bunch of code so I don't have to type it all that I had ready. So when we're in idle state, and what we're going to do is we're going to check to see if the input's up, and we're going to set the state to up. We're going to check the input down. We're going to set the input to down, left, right, so on and so forth. And if they're not pressing anything, we're going to set it to idle. For now, we're just going to copy and paste all of this. And don't forget your break. I forgot to add the breaks in here. So the reason you do this is if you wanted to change anything about what the player could control or can't control within a state, you have full control over it in here. And this is important because in a minute we're going to need this, because there's a state that's going to happen where we can't control the player at all. It does something and then it gives us control back. So let's set all these up. Okay, let's take a look at our code. Okay, so we've got the right. We are checking for all the inputs and setting the right input. Left, up, down, and even in the idle. So this should technically work, and there's still going to be a bug that I want to show you guys, but it's easy to fix. It's part of what we're going to set. Okay, so left, right, there's the bug, up, down. Okay, so we got almost everything. So what do we have to do to fix that? Well, this is an easy fix. To set the right, we basically flip the image on its axis. And the way you do that is you say, what is it? Image X scale. And if you make that equal to -1, then it's going to flip it. But that also means as soon as you flip this to -1, all the sprites are going to be wrong in the other states. So what we need to do is we actually have to set this just as much in the left. We have to set it to 1. And we're going to set that to 1 on all of the states. So that the image index is always correct when we get back to that state. We're even going to set that here. So actually we don't need it here because at this point we never change the index. Okay, so image scale, and I think I need to do it. No, that should be it. So let's see what we got. Now he's turning right, up, left, down. So we are good to go now. This is all correct. So now we've got our player sprite moving around. And the last thing we're going to do for this episode is to add the attack. And we're going to add it to one of the sides for now, just to learn how to deal with it. So let's go. One thing we set up is our input, and we said B button. Okay, so the A button is what we use for attack, And so what we're going to do is let's do it in the left. We're going to say if input B button A, then we're going to make the state equal to attack sword start. Okay. So that means we need to add a new case here. So what we're going to do is we're going to start the attack. We're going to say attack sword start. And what we're going to put in here is we're going to set up stuff to get ready for the attack. And we're going to set the image speed. Can't type today. Speed equal to 0. We're also going to stop the velocity on both of these because we're going to stop the player. If you remember, the player stops when we hit the button. So we're going to stop the velocity and we're going to set a timer to equal to 15 ticks. And what this is for what we're doing today, let me go ahead and show you in the game again. There's a slight pause. You see, it's just a slight pause, and it's about 15 ticks. And all I'm gonna do in this episode is we're gonna pause it. We're not gonna draw the sword yet. We're gonna pause it, and then move back into whatever state that we need to. So the start of this attack is setting up the sword attack. And so let's see, what else are we going to do? We're going to set the sprite is equal to sprite player attack side. And we're going to now set the state to equal to sword attack. So now we got to create our sword attack. Case, sword, attack. Actually, I said that backwards. Let's use the same terminology here. Attack sword, attack sword. Yeah, that'll work better. All right, so what are we going to do here? We're going to check to see if the timer is greater than 0. And if it is, we're just gonna take down, we're gonna say timer minus equals to 1. So we're gonna tick it down until it hits 0. Else, we're gonna say state equals idle. Okay, so here's what we're doing is no matter what state we're in, which way we're facing basically, eventually we're going to go back to idle, but if the player is pressing left, right, or up and down, it'll change it to that state. So this will change over time, but the whole purpose of this is to show you how to do a state change where we actually get to see the pause. And then in a later episode, we're going to actually add the attacks, we're going to add the bombs, we're going to add some of the items that you can actually play with. So let's see if this works. Make sure there's no bugs in it. And what I'll do is I'll tell you what I'm pressing as far as when I press the attack button. And what I forgot was what we set the attack button to. Was it enter? Oh, we didn't set it. So that was not going to work. So let's go ahead and turn this off. We actually need to set these to the right thing. So let's make this keyboard check pressed. In this case, we just want to check to see if it's pressed once, and we're going to say VK. Let's do space for this one. And we'll do the same exact thing for these. I'm doing just, so the keyboard check pressed only calculates it once. That way it doesn't, after you press it and you're holding it, it won't do the action again, which is what we want. Okay, so VK enter. So that's what we'll make them for now. So when I press space, we should see a slight pause. You're going to see a slight change in the animation where his hand goes out. And when we do the attack, we'll actually draw the sword some other time. Okay, so space. And time. Oh, that's right. So there's a slight bug where I'm checking for time when the actual variable is called timer. Okay. All right, space. Okay, it flashed there for a second. So it's not as long as I was hoping. It didn't really pause much. So let's see what's going on there. So we do the image speed. We're ticking it down. That all looks right to me. It's greater than 0. Oh, you have to add the breaks in. I often forget that. It's a very simple mistake. So otherwise, if you don't do that, it's going to go on and try to read, and it's going to find out that I was pressing left, so it's going to move on to the left. So now, there we go. So there was that pause. It pressed space, pause for a little bit. And so we'll mess with the timing of these and how fast all this works. But basically, that's it. And we would do that with the right, left, up and down, but we need to add the animations, and I don't have those yet. So we are going to add all of that plus the actual attack in the next episode, and we might get to collisions in the next one, or all. If we don't have enough time for that, we'll do it in the next one. So hopefully this was helpful. You guys are now starting to see the player coming together, and soon we'll start to see it actually work with actual items and swords and interacting with objects, and then we'll start adding enemies. So if you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you want to keep watching these episodes, and we'll see you in the next episode.